The word fiancé detonated in Debra's skull like a flashbang. She heard it. She understood the individual letters. But her brain refused to assemble them into anything that made sense. Because this man, this terrifying stranger with coffee dripping down his $5,000 suit and murder in his eyes, had just called her his fiancée. To another terrifying stranger, who was now staring at her like she was a math problem that didn't add up. Your fiancé. The silver-haired man, Hector, apparently, let the word hang in the air. His eyes crawled from her coffee-stained blouse to her flushed face to the iron grip still locked around her wrist. I wasn't aware you were engaged, Calvin. Calvin. The name landed somewhere in the back of her mind, trying to connect to something. Calvin Martinez. Why did she know that name? Why did it make her blood run cold? Recent development, Calvin said. His voice was calm, conversational, even, like he hadn't just committed her to a lie she didn't understand. She's enthusiastic. Debra opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Calvin's grip tightened. A warning. Don't. She spilled coffee on you, Hector observed. At your own building. Your fiancée. She's clumsy. Calvin's thumb pressed into her pulse point. She wondered if he could feel how fast her heart was racing. I find it charming. He did not sound charmed. He sounded like a man who was going to kill her the moment they were alone. Hector's gaze sharpened. Interesting timing. You've been avoiding my calls for 3 weeks, and suddenly you have a woman. Convenient. Love rarely checks our schedules. Your father would have called this sloppy. Something shifted in Calvin's expression. Microscopic. Dangerous. My father is dead. I make my own arrangements now. The lobby felt 10 degrees colder. Debra's survival instincts, dormant for 24 years of conflict avoidance, suddenly screamed at her. These men weren't businessmen. They weren't investors. They were something else entirely, and she'd stumbled into the middle of it with a Vinnie dark roast and a death wish she hadn't known she had. Run, her brain screamed. Run, run, run. We should discuss this privately, Hector said. His smile didn't reach his eyes. Bring your enthusiastic fiancée. I'd love to get to know her better. Another time. Calvin pulled Debra closer. Not gently, not romantically, but like she was a chess piece he was removing from the board. She has an appointment. I'm sure she can reschedule. She can't. The two men stared at each other. Debra felt like a mouse caught between two wolves deciding who got to eat first. Then Hector laughed. It was a cold, hollow sound. Fine. We'll continue this conversation later. He stepped closer, and Debra fought the urge to flinch. I look forward to seeing more of you, miss. Her throat was sandpaper. Newby. Debra. Debra Newby. Debra. He tasted her name like he was memorizing it. Such a pleasure. He walked past them, his entourage following like shadows. The lobby remained frozen until the front doors closed behind him. Then Calvin moved. He released her wrist, finally, only to clamp his hand on her elbow and steer her toward a private elevator she hadn't noticed. His men flanked them, blocking any escape route she might have considered. Wait, Debra stumbled on her heels. I don't. What just, you can't just. Get in the elevator. I have a job. I'm already late. My boss is going to. Your boss works in this building. I own this building. Get in the elevator. The door slid open. Calvin pushed her inside. The mirrored walls reflected her horror back at her from every angle. Wild hair, coffee stains, the face of a woman who had made a terrible mistake and was only beginning to understand how terrible. The doors closed. Calvin pressed a button. The elevator climbed. Silence. Debra's voice came out as a whisper. What just happened? You ruined my suit. I know. I'm sorry. I'll pay for the dry cleaning, The suit costs more than you make in a month. He turned to face her, and the full force of his attention was suffocating. Dark eyes. Hard jaw. The kind of face that belonged on a wanted poster or a warning label. It's ruined. Dry cleaning won't save it. Then I'll pay you back. Monthly installments. I can. You're $87,000 in debt. Debra's stomach dropped. How do you know that? I know everything about everyone who enters my building. He pulled out a handkerchief, monogrammed, because of course it was, and wiped coffee from his hands with slow, deliberate movements. You're Debra Newby, 24, junior architect at Hanover & Associates, 7th floor. You graduated top of your class, and now you fetch coffee for men who can't spell architect. You live alone. You have one sister. Your credit score is a disaster. And 10 minutes ago, You were just a nobody I'd never have to think about. He stepped closer. Debra stepped back. Her shoulders hit the mirrored wall. But now, he continued, his voice dropping to something low and dangerous. You owe me more than a suit. You owe me a performance. I don't understand. That man, Hector Vance, wants me to marry his daughter to merge our territories. I've been declining. Now he thinks I have a fiancée. Calvin's eyes held hers. You're going to be that fiancée. For the next 3 months, you're going to smile, wear the ring, and convince everyone we're in love. Debra's laugh came out strangled. You're insane. Probably. I'm not. I can't. I don't even know you. You don't need to know me. You need to act like you know me. He tucked the ruined handkerchief away. In exchange, I'll clear your debt. All of it. You'll be free. The number echoed in her head. $87,000. Gone. And if I refuse? Calvin smiled. It was the most terrifying thing she'd ever seen. Then I tell Hector the truth. That you're not my fiancée. You're just a clumsy girl who spilled coffee on the wrong man. He leaned closer, his breath warm against her ear. And Hector will assume you're a weakness he can exploit. He'll find your sister. He'll find your mother. And he'll use them to get to me. Debra couldn't breathe. So, Calvin pulled back. Do we have a deal? The elevator stopped. The doors opened onto a penthouse that probably cost more than her entire apartment building. Debra looked at the gleaming floors, the floor-to-ceiling windows, the world of wealth and violence she'd crashed into headfirst. Then she looked at Calvin Martinez, the devil in a ruined suit, offering her freedom wrapped in chains. I want it in writing, she whispered. His smile sharpened. Smart girl. The contract was 12 pages long. Debra sat on a leather couch that cost more than her car. Not that she had a car anymore. She'd sold it 6 months ago to make rent, and stared at the document in her hands. The legalese swam before her eyes, but certain phrases jumped out like warning flares. 3 months of cohabitation. Public appearances as required. Physical affection as necessary for believability. Physical affection, she said flatly. Calvin stood by the window, silhouetted against the Manhattan skyline. He'd removed his ruined jacket. The coffee stain on his white shirt made him look almost human. Almost. Hand-holding. The occasional kiss on the cheek. He didn't turn around. Nothing you can't handle. And if I can't handle it, then Hector finds out you're a fraud, and we both have problems. Now he turned. Yours will be shorter. And more painful. Debra's hands trembled. The pages rustled. She should refuse. She should throw this contract in his face, march back to her sad little apartment, and pretend this morning never happened. She should. I bought your debt this morning. The words hit her like a second cup of coffee to the chest. You what? Student loans. Credit cards. That medical bill from your mother's surgery that you've been paying off for 3 years. Calvin walked toward her, slow and deliberate. All of it. Transferred to me. You now owe exactly one person, Miss Newby, and he's standing in front of you. Debra felt the blood drain from her face. You can't do that. I can do anything I want. He sat across from her, close enough that she could smell his cologne beneath the coffee. Sandalwood and something darker. The question is what you're going to do. This is blackmail. This is an opportunity. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. 3 months. You play the role. You stay here, where I can keep you safe and visible. And when it's over, you walk away debt-free. No strings. No slit. Stay here. The penthouse has 6 bedrooms. You'll have your own. I'm not interested in anything you're not offering. Debra searched his face for the lie. She found nothing but cold calculation. $87,000. Gone. Her sister safe. Her mother safe. 3 months of pretending to love a monster. She picked up the pen. If you hurt my family, I protect what's mine. His eyes held hers. For 3 months, that includes you. Debra signed her name. The ink felt like blood. Debra had survived 3 days in Calvin Martinez's world, and she was failing spectacularly. Stop apologizing, Calvin said for the 100th time. His voice clipped as he watched her from across the penthouse's marble kitchen island. Sorry, I mean. Debra clamped her mouth shut, cheeks burning. She'd just apologized to the doorframe after walking into it. Calvin pinched the bridge of his nose. You're supposed to be my fiancée. A woman I chose. Women I choose don't apologize to furniture. Right? Cold. Untouchable. Debra squared her shoulders and tried to look intimidating. She lasted 5 seconds before her stomach growled loud enough to echo. Calvin's jaw twitched. Was that almost a smile? Again, he commanded, gesturing to the dining table where he'd set up a mock dinner scenario. You're meeting my associate. He insults you. What do you do? Stab him with my fork. You smile and say nothing. Silence is power. Debra tried. She really did. But when Calvin's head of security, Marcus, played the role of the insulting associate and called her the boss's little pet, she blurted, "Well, at least I don't look like a rejected Batman villain." The room went silent. Marcus's hand moved toward his weapon. Then Calvin laughed, sharp and short, like he'd surprised himself. "Out," he told Marcus. When they were alone, Calvin studied her with those dark, unreadable eyes. "You're terrible at this. I know. I'm an architect, not a mobster's." "But," he interrupted, stepping closer, "you're brave when you're cornered. Work with that." His hand lifted, and she flinched, but he only tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "Stop trying to be me. Be someone who chose me. There's a difference." Debra's breath caught. For a moment, the terrifying crime lord looked almost patient. "Okay," she whispered. "I can try that." "Good. Because tomorrow, we go public." The boutique was the kind of place Debra had only seen in movies. All crystal chandeliers and hushed voices, where even the air smelled expensive. Calvin guided her inside with a hand at the small of her back, and immediately a rail-thin woman in all black appeared, eyeing Debra's clearance rack blazer with barely concealed horror. "Something appropriate for the Rossi Gala," Calvin said simply, and the woman's disapproval transformed into reverence. Apparently, the magic words were Rossi Gala, and not, "Please don't judge my client's Target shoes." Debra was ushered into a dressing room the size of her entire apartment, while assistants brought gown after gown. She tried on 5 before finding one that didn't make her look like she was playing dress-up in her mother's curtains, a deep emerald silk that hugged her curves and pooled at her feet like dark water. She stepped out barefoot, holding the fabric up. Calvin had been checking his phone, but he looked up and went completely still. "Well?" Debra asked, suddenly self-conscious. "Is it cold and untouchable enough?" He didn't answer, just stood, his gaze traveling from her face down the length of the gown with an intensity that made her skin prickle with heat. When he crossed to her, his movements were deliberate, controlled. "Turn around." Her heart hammered as she obeyed. She felt him behind her, close enough that his breath warmed her bare shoulder. His fingers found the zipper at her spine. She'd only managed to pull it halfway up. "You missed this," he murmured, his voice lower than usual. The zipper's rasp was deafening in the quiet boutique. His knuckles brushed her skin as he drew it up slowly, so slowly, and Debra forgot how to breathe. She could feel the heat radiating from him, the careful control in every movement. When the zipper reached the top, his hands settled briefly on her shoulders. In the mirror ahead, their eyes met. "Perfect," Calvin said, but he wasn't looking at the dress anymore. Debra's reflection showed a woman she barely recognized, elegant, flushed, wanted. And the man behind her looked like he was reconsidering every rule he'd set about keeping this arrangement strictly business. "We'll take it," he told the assistant without breaking eye contact. For once, Debra didn't apologize for the price tag. The ballroom glittered like something out of a fever dream. All gold leaf and champagne glasses, and people who looked like they'd never spilled coffee in their lives. Debra's hand trembled on Calvin's arm as they descended the marble staircase, every eye turning toward them. "Breathe," Calvin murmured against her ear. "You look like you belong here. I design buildings. I don't do this." Her voice was barely a whisper. "You survived 3 days with me. This is easy." His hand covered hers, warm and steady. "Stay close." But Calvin was pulled away within minutes by men in expensive suits with dead eyes, leaving Debra stranded by the champagne fountain like a life raft had just abandoned her. "You're the coffee girl." Debra turned to find 3 women watching her with expressions ranging from curiosity to amusement. The one who'd spoken, a statuesque blonde in red, smiled like a cat cornering a mouse. "Ah, yes," Debra managed. "I'm Sophia, Dante's wife." She gestured to the others. "We heard about the suit. $5,000 of Italian wool, ruined." Debra's stomach dropped. "It was an accident, I swear." "Relax, honey." Another woman laughed, dark-haired and heavily jeweled. "If it were a problem, you'd be at the bottom of the harbor, not wearing Valentino." "I'm Marie." "We're just curious," Sophia said, leaning in conspiratorially. How you managed to snag Calvin Martinez. That man's been turning down marriage arrangements for 5 years. Debra thought about Calvin's lessons. Silence is power. Be someone who chose him. She took a breath and smiled. Have you tried spilling coffee on him? It's surprisingly effective. The women stared for a beat, then erupted in laughter. Oh, I like her, Marie declared. She's got spine. For the next 20 minutes, Debra simply listened and asked questions about their lives, their children, the charity auction. She didn't pretend to be someone she wasn't. And somehow that worked. Sophia squeezed her hand and whispered, "You're good for him. He actually looks happy." Then a hand clamped onto Debra's wrist. "Let's talk, Princessa." The man was young, handsome, and reeked of cologne and malice. Hector's nephew. She recognized him from the briefing Calvin had given her. "I'm fine here, thanks." Wasn't a request. He yanked her toward the balcony. Debra's champagne glass shattered on the marble. The temperature in the ballroom seemed to drop 10 degrees. Through the crowd, she saw Calvin turn, his gaze locking onto her wrist in another man's grip. The expression on his face made her blood run cold. He moved like a predator, people parting instinctively. "Remove your hand," Calvin said quietly, "or I remove it for you." The nephew paled but tried to laugh it off. "Just getting to know your—" Calvin's gun pressed against the man's ribs so smoothly no one else noticed. "She is mine. Her wrist, her time, her air, all mine. Touch her again, and they'll find pieces of you in 3 states." The hand released immediately. Calvin pulled Debra against his side, his arm iron around her waist. "We clear." "Crystal," the nephew stammered, retreating. Debra's heart raced as Calvin's thumb stroked her hip possessively. "You okay?" he asked, voice gentler now. She nodded and realized something terrifying. She'd never felt safer in her life. Debra woke to pre-dawn silence and the unfamiliar weight of Egyptian cotton sheets. For a moment, she forgot where she was, then remembered. Penthouse. Mob boss. Fake fiancé. Right. She padded to the kitchen barefoot, determined to do the one thing she was actually good at, make coffee. Carefully. Very carefully. The machine hissed and gurgled, filling the air with rich, dark aroma. She was pouring her second cup when she heard footsteps. Calvin appeared in the kitchen doorway wearing only gray sweatpants, his hair disheveled from sleep. No $1,000 suit. No gun at his hip. No mask of cold control. Just a man, surprisingly human in the early light. "You made coffee," he said, voice rough with sleep. Without spilling it, Debra offered a tentative smile. "Progress." He crossed to her and took the mug she offered. Their fingers brushed. He leaned against the counter, and that's when she saw them. The scars. One across his ribs, puckered and old. Another along his collarbone. A life written in violence on his skin. "How many?" she asked quietly. "Knife or bullet?" "Either." Stopped counting. He sipped the coffee, watching her over the rim. "You make it strong. Architecture school. I practically have espresso in my veins." She hesitated. "My dad left when I was 12. Student debt. Mom got sick junior year, so I worked 3 jobs while finishing my degree." She didn't know why she was telling him this. "Everyone said I should quit, that I was in over my head. But you didn't." "No." She met his eyes. "I don't quit when things get hard. I just apologize a lot while I figure it out." Something shifted in his expression, recognition, maybe. "Respect." "You think I'm a monster," he said. It wasn't a question. "I think you're dangerous." Debra stepped closer, surprising herself. "I think you've done terrible things. But I also think—" She reached out, fingers hovering over the scar on his collarbone. "Someone hurt you first." His hand caught her wrist, gentle this time. Not restraining. Holding. Debra. Her name sounded different in his mouth at 5 a.m., without an audience. Real. Calvin. The coffee grew cold between them as the sun rose over the city, and neither one moved away. The contract said 3 months. But this, whatever this was becoming, didn't feel temporary anymore. Debra stepped onto the penthouse balcony for privacy, her phone pressed to her ear. She hadn't talked to her sister in 3 days, and Emma was starting to panic. "I'm fine, Em." "Really? You're living with a crime lord, Deb? How is that fine?" Debra glanced through the glass doors. Calvin was in a meeting in his office, visible through the open doorway, all sharp focus and lethal elegance. "It's complicated. Is he holding you there? Blink twice if you need help." "I'm on the phone, Emma. You can't see me blink." Debra rubbed her temples. "Look, Yes, he's scary. Like, terrifying. The man threatened to remove someone's hand at a gala last week. Oh my God. But he's also, I don't know. He's not what I expected. She lowered her voice. Sometimes he's almost gentle. And when he looks at me, I feel. Stockholm Syndrome. That's called Stockholm Syndrome. It's not, Debra sighed. I can't explain it. Just trust me, okay? I'm safe. The debt's being handled. 2 more months, and I'm free. If you're sure. I'm sure. I love you. Tell Mom I'm working on a big project, nothing more. She ended the call and turned to find Calvin in the doorway, 2 glasses of wine in hand. Her heart jumped. Everything okay? He asked. Just my sister. Worried about me. Smart sister. He handed her a glass, his fingers lingering on hers. You could tell her the truth. That I'm fake engaged to the city's most dangerous man, and I'm starting to forget it's fake? The words escaped before she could stop them. Calvin's eyes darkened. He stepped closer, and Debra's breath caught. Across the street, in a high-rise apartment, a man lowered his headphones and smiled. The parabolic microphone had caught everything. Well, almost everything. The parts about her being terrified. The debt. The timeline. 2 more months until she's free. He scrolled back through the recording, isolating the crucial phrase. Yes, he's scary. Like, terrifying. I can't explain it. 2 more months, and I'm free. Perfect. Hector would pay handsomely for proof that Martinez's engagement was a sham, that the girl wasn't a willing fiancée, but a hostage counting down days to freedom. He sent the edited audio file with a single message. The girl's a prisoner. Martinez is vulnerable. On the balcony, unaware of the traps snapping shut around them, Debra let Calvin pull her close as the city lights glittered below. Stay, he murmured against her hair. And God help her, she wanted to. It happened between the coffee shop and the car. One moment Debra was carrying 2 lattes, smiling at the thought of surprising Calvin. The next, a hand clamped over her mouth, an arm around her waist, and the world went black as a bag covered her head. She woke in a chair, wrists zip-tied, head pounding. When the bag was ripped off, she faced Hector himself, silver-haired, elegant, and absolutely merciless. Miss Newby, let's talk about your relationship with Calvin Martinez. I don't know what. The slap came fast, snapping her head sideways. Blood filled her mouth. We have recordings. You called him terrifying. Said you'd be free in 2 months. Hector leaned close, reeking of cigars. You're not his fiancée. You're his hostage, which makes you worthless to him. Fear clawed up Debra's throat, but she forced herself to meet his eyes. You're wrong. Then why did you say? Because I was scared. The words burst out. Not of being with him, of how much I wanted to stay. Her voice cracked. He's terrifying, yes. He's dangerous and violent, and everything I should run from. But he's also the first person who ever made me feel like I mattered. Like I was worth protecting. Tears streamed down her face. So if you're waiting for me to betray him, you'll be waiting a long time. Because I love him. The realization hit her as she said it. God help her. She loved Calvin Martinez. Hector's expression hardened. Then you'll die with him. Calvin stood in his office, phone pressed to his ear, and the city's underworld trembled. I want every camera feed. Every informant. Every debt called in. His voice was glacial death. Find her. Marcus had never seen his boss like this. Unhinged. Feral. Calvin had already put 3 of Hector's lieutenants in the hospital. Boss, we've got a location. Warehouse on the docks. Calvin was moving before Marcus finished speaking, gun in hand, his entire operation mobilizing like an army. Anyone who stands between me and her, Calvin said quietly, dies. He'd burn the world down for less. For Debra, the clumsy architect who'd spilled coffee on his suit and somehow stolen his heart, he'd burn it down twice. Hector had made a fatal mistake. He'd touched what belonged to Calvin Martinez. The warehouse doors exploded inward. Calvin moved through Hector's men like a force of nature. Precise, lethal, unstoppable. Gunfire echoed off metal walls. Debra heard shouting, screaming, then silence. Then he was there, cutting through her zip ties, his hands frantically checking her face, her arms, the blood at her lip. I'm okay, she whispered. Calvin, I'm. He pulled her against him so hard she couldn't breathe, his heart hammering against her cheek. I thought I lost you. You found me. Behind them, Marcus was securing Hector, who looked significantly less elegant with a gun to his head. Calvin barely glanced back. Handle it. He carried Debra to the car himself, refusing to let her walk. The ride back to the penthouse was silent, his hand gripping hers like she might disappear. She showered while he paced outside the bathroom door. When she emerged in his borrowed shirt, he was staring out the window, shoulders rigid. The contract's fulfilled, he said without turning. Your debt is cleared. Your family's protected. Hector won't be a problem anymore. Debra's stomach dropped. What are you saying? I'm saying you're free to go. His voice was carefully neutral. I'll have Marcus arrange an apartment. Security for 6 months. A reference for any firm you want. You're letting me go. I'm keeping you safe. He finally turned, and the pain in his eyes nearly broke her. You were almost killed because of me. I won't. I can't. Stop. Debra crossed to the bar cart and poured a glass of red wine. Calvin watched, confused, as she walked straight up to him and dumped it down the front of his white shirt. He stared at the spreading stain, then at her, absolutely stunned. Did you just spill a drink on you? Yes. Debra's hands were shaking, but her voice was steady. I'm clumsy, remember? Happens all the time around you. Debra, I'm not afraid anymore, Calvin. Not of your world, not of the danger, and definitely not of you. She grabbed his stained shirt, pulling him close. When they had me in that warehouse, all I could think was that I'd never told you the truth. That this stopped being fake for me weeks ago. His hands came up to frame her face, wine-stained fingers gentle against her skin. You should run from me. Tried that. Ended up spilling coffee on you instead. I think the universe is telling me something. Debra. Her name was a prayer and a curse. I can't promise you safety. I don't want safety. I want you. Calvin kissed her like a man drowning, like she was air and salvation and everything he'd never let himself want. When he finally pulled back, he reached into his pocket. The ring was different from the fake one, smaller, simpler, real. Marry me, he said. Not for a contract. Not for show. Marry me because I love you, and I'm terrified, and you're the only person who's ever made me want to be better. Debra looked at the ring, at the wine stain spreading across his chest, at the most dangerous man in the city looking at her like she held his entire world in her hands. Yes, she whispered. But you're buying your own coffee from now on. He laughed, real and warm and free, and kissed her again as the sun rose over their city. If you're rooting for Debra and Calvin's dangerously perfect love story, subscribe for more romance where the biggest risks lead to the greatest rewards.